Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicke, and I am joined with my co-host Lou Caminelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions or directions from our various employers. We are out here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Lou, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Matt. Back from vacation.
Yeah, it took a little long one there, huh?
So yeah, it took a long one. It was good. A lot of time on the boat. It was good. Tonight, we
sunburn
have
and coronas, or
no sunburn. No sunburn. The Italian olive skin helped me on that one. No coronas either. But tonight, I did mention we got a guest with us. Started his career as a volunteer, still as a volunteer officer. He's got some time on a job that, the city that we work, we border the city with. Good dude, good family name in the fire service around these parts. Tonight, we'd like to welcome Mike. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Guys? How are you? Thank you. Good to see you.
So, we can start from the beginning. Where are you from? If you want to get into that, you're from pretty much where we are from.
Right, yeah. Grew up, born and raised in Rochester, grew up in the town of Chi-Li. Spent most of my time around there until I was 18. Did the military thing for a little bit, and then I moved into the city trying to get hired as a fireman. Got on there, and then after a couple of years, maybe even just a year in the city, moved back out to Chi-Li with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and still living in Chi-Li. West side, best side.
Yeah.
Co-workers don't say that.
West side.
West side, best side.
Did you play any sports in school?
Yeah, grew up playing ice hockey, and then I don't know if it technically call it a sport or a leisurely hobby for retired folks and shitty hockey players, but I played golf.
Hockey in this area is like the fireman's sport, it seems like.
A lot of firemen back in the day. Growing up as a kid going to watch the hockey games.
Yeah. Yeah, the FDNY's got their team. A lot of big cities got their team, but it seems like our area, and when I say our area, it's like, the Rochester area, the Buffalo area. Does Syracuse got a team? I don't think.
I believe they do.
They do?
I believe they do, yeah.
And then you got the Monroe County team.
That's gotten huge in the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Even our team, it's just, everybody's hiring a lot lately, and it just happens to be a big batch of hockey players, and all of the classes, you go into a tournament, and the guy put it together is just like, everybody show up thinking 10 people will be there, and you walk in, there's 35 guys in the locker room, and all right, I'll play one shift today. All right, good to see everybody.
I remember when I did a ride along with Battalion Chief Bagley before he retired. This is probably 20 years ago. We were doing, he was doing his rounds as the battalion chief, and every firehouse we stopped into, he was like, hey, this, family friend of mine is looking to get on the job. And it wasn't like, hey, what's your fire service experience? It was like, do you play softball? Do you play hockey?
Right. Right.
Those were the two most important questions that they had,
Yep.
But yeah, my mind, I think Matt shares the same thing. Sports does a lot for just maturity, growing up, getting the mindset for actually our profession, and then compound that with what your military time. But, just the team aspect of sports, if you play sport like hockey, which is heavily team-based, there's not much individual stuff going on in hockey unless you're the goalie.
Right.
But, a fire company essentially is a four-man team, and you got to rely on your teammates to do stuff. And you learn those lessons playing sports. And I almost
I know.
Do you find that there's a lot of guys getting into the fire service now that don't grow up playing sports?
So I'm not sure if it's the deviation and number of guys growing up or people growing up playing sports. I don't know if it's the way the sports are played or the way they're handled, the schools. I'm not sure what it is, but there seems to be a difference from, I'm younger than both of you, but I'd like to think that I was raised by people that gave me the same mentality of the generation before me. So growing up, I feel like I assimilate and am more in tune with guys your age than people my age, just because that's what my family brought me up around. The accountability thing, playing the sports of, you may not like it, but it's just part of the job sometimes, stuff like that. Whereas now I hate to use the overabused phrase, but everybody gets a trophy. That kind of started midway through
Yeah.
me growing up going through sports. I think that really does have an impact. If you're going to show up and get a trophy for just being a participant, used to have that drive as a kid. Like, man, if you weren't first or second place, sometimes even just first place, you got nothing.
Right. And
So it gave you that extra drive. You wanted that trophy in your hand. Even just bragging rights. You didn't care if you even played. Man, I rode the pine for the team that won this game.
Well, when did you? So primarily hockey, right? Was your sport?
Yes.
When did you start it? What age or grade?
Boy, I genuinely couldn't tell you exactly what age, but from whenever my parents were able to strap on, my grandpa used to make a rink in his backyard all the time for us kids. They all grew up playing hockey, him included. So it was literally, they'd take the youngest kid with the smallest feet. And I don't know where they got these things from, but it was just a metal plate with two blades mounted to the bottom.
The double runners.
Kid that without the bells, the double runners, and it was just velcroed around the kid's winter boot, and you got, held on to, and they just kind of shimmied you around the ice everywhere, and that's when it started.
So did you choose it, or did it get thrust on you? And kind of like where I'm going with that is throughout your time of hockey, even leading up to, the casual pickup games that you guys do now, did you always enjoy it? Or was it kind of at the beginning forced, then you kind of stumbled your way through it? You didn't really want to, but your parents held you to your commitment. Now it's up to you on your own time. But
I think I always enjoyed it. I always wanted to do it until maybe come high school time when it came for, competition. And I didn't grow up playing in these big travel leagues. I didn't have a ton of talent, but I was okay enough to make the high school team. And towards the end, I was like, I'm sick of not playing or getting almost no playing time. I was like, I'm going to quit. And at that point, I remember my dad saying, if you quit, you're going to quit everything for the rest of your life. You're finishing the season. Oh, at the time I might have, been pissed at him for it, or I don't remember, but after especially
right.
joining the military and you get some people under your wing, you have to take care of, you go, oh, that's what he's talking about. I see that in kids.
Lou, did you have that same thing with wrestling? Did you ever have that?
I never wanted to quit wrestling. I never wanted to quit baseball. I went out for football. So our high school is the same high school Mike went to. They don't anymore because it's a whole nother topic about sports these days. But back when I was in school,
that was a powerhouse.
Yeah, I mean, we had a 9th grade team, we had a JV team, and we had a varsity team. And if you were in 8th grade, you could go out for the 9th grade team. And I got cut as an 8th grader. I was a little small, compared to the other kids that were going out for the team. And then I got cut, and I enjoyed football, but it was one of those things where my friends that made the team for football, when they got the 9th grade, they were going to make the JV team, and then I would be a freshman on the freshman team, and all my friends would be with me. So I was like, you know what, I'll just take the fall off and concentrate on wrestling. But it was, I got caught. It was never like I made a commitment to football, so I had to quit mid-season. It was more or less I got cut, and I just never went out for it again. But that line you said, if you quit now, you're going to quit everything in your future, and that's. I don't think I've had this discussion with my 8-year-old right now about with baseball. I don't think he's going to grasp that concept, but that's a good way of putting it because, kids these days, especially when school's out and they don't, they want to do everything else besides the sports that they're playing. Because, when they're in school, it's a little more regimented. But then school's out, their attention span's gone. And then, Thursday, whatever day the games are, it's like, I really don't want to play. It's like, well, buddy, you made a commitment to the team. You are committed to the team. There's only a couple more games left. Finish the season out, and let's go. Then he tells me at the end of the season, he goes, "I want to quit baseball. I just want to play football." And I was like, "I don't want you." It's not that I don't want to play football, but youth tackle football they start like August 1st. Practices are 5 days a week, and then their games.
A long season.
Yeah, and then their games are Sundays. So I kind of played that in my favor. At first, I tried to pull the Josh Allen scenario. I said, dude, Josh Allen didn't play Pop Warner football. He played football in high school and stuff like that. I go, he was a baseball player, so you really should, And he was like, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, I still really want to play football." So then I pulled out the big guns. I said, "Dude, if you play football, your games are on Sundays. The Bills play Sunday. We're gonna miss a lot of Bills games if you play football." He's
That's
like,
it. I'm not playing this stupid
he goes,
sport.
yeah, he goes, "You know what? I think I'll play flag football another year because flag football is on Saturday morning, so it works out perfect." But so
Nice.
yeah, I
Got him.
skated one more year of free
All
Sundays for football. But that point you made up, the commitment, that's a good lesson, a life lesson to instill in anybody. And I don't think, unless you're in some sort of organization, even a club, and it doesn't have to be sports, just anything that you can make a commitment to. I think that's an awesome lesson to give kids at a young age.
Yeah.
And I think just sports is just better at it than most other things.
Yeah, I think Matt
So
used this phrase on me a few times. It's not so much the quitting thing, but the old the Irish Catholic guilt is what keeps you around. Make sure you keep to your word.
so did you enlist right out of high school, or did you do time in college? Or
So I wanted to go right out of high school. I was going to go active duty. I went through a few different plans. I was going to go to Annapolis originally, get my engineering degree, be an officer, serve 4 years, then go find some super cool police unit, tactical unit thing, federal law enforcement, whatever, and just do cool stuff chasing bad guys. And
Oh,
that
wow. I
changed
think
to,
we have to end this right here. I didn't know this.
right, yeah. And then that changed to, well, I'm just going to go active duty. I just want to do my short 4 years or whatever, enlistment I decide to do. Same thing, move on to the military or the police force after that. And then I got talking to a recruiter. My parents, I was basically told to either go to at least MCC. And, I don't know what the empty threat was. They just knew they thought I was too smart to just enlist and not get any college or whatever. But I graduated early and went to MCC for a year. And then I joined the reserve. So you still go through the same boot camp, basic schoolhouse training for whatever MOS or job you pick. And then you come back and get assigned to your unit. At the time, the war was still going on, war on terror. Recruiter, as everybody else will say, lied to you. Thought, okay, I'm going to get to go home. And at this point, I had also decided, because in all of this, I had joined Chi-Li and after doing the Explorer thing and realized, I kind of like the fire service a lot. I should do this for a career. So I said, all right, join the reserves. I'll get some deployments out of it. And then in a couple of years when the city test is offered, I'll hit it. And I'll get the best of both worlds. I get to stay home every now and again, still get to go on some deployments, see some stuff, then be a fireman. Well, I didn't go on a single fucking combat deployment, nor did I get hired until the very end. And then I got sent to go do nothing for a year. So the recruiter really got me on that one.
So
missed the first year of the job.
You made mention there a couple things. So you went to MCC. So that's a local community college here where we're out of. During that time, you were with Chi-Li Fire Department, which is volunteer.
Right.
Okay. Is that where you started in the fire service?
Correct. Yep. So
okay.
Same thing, talking about, family ties. When my grandpa got home from Vietnam, they moved out to Chi-Li. They grew up around Rochester. They moved out to Chi-Li. He joined the fire department. And then I just stayed in the family from there. Dad, uncle were involved in it, growing up watching them go to everything, go watch them do the training, seeing them run out for calls, come back all, smoky, sweaty, soot stained, talking about the cool things they did. So I joined the Explorer program at, 14, like a lot of places have. Started doing that, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I'm going to continue on with this. Joined to be a member when I was old enough. And then it wasn't long after that. I think I was maybe a year, if that, before I went off to the military. And then came back to it once I got done with the training. It was only 6-ish months. And then I stayed with Chi-Li until I ended up getting hired, I think, 2018. I resigned to focus on the job.
Okay. So from start of being a full member at Chi-Li to the time you got hired, how many years? And how does that correlate with your military time?
So I would have joined Chi-Li in 2013, I believe. And I would have gotten out at the very end of 2017, so just under 5 years, right at 5 years. And I joined the Marines in 2014. And I did that until 2020.
So a little bit of school. Were you doing anything for work at the time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or did you just have a big allowance?
No, I worked all through summers growing up in high school. I worked at Brookley doing the grounds. Another volunteer fireman got me the job there. And then I did some landscaping in my summers. I'm trying to remember if I did school. I only went to MCC for 3 total semesters. I don't remember if I packed them all in and just did heavy credits for, 2 spring and 1 fall type thing, or if I did some summer classes. I honestly can't remember if I worked. I may have done some landscaping here and there, just had enough saved money that I figured I'd blow it all before I went and made money in the military, and then made no money in the military.
Right. So your old man, how long was he on the job in the city for? And when I say the job, not the fire job, he was a police officer.
I believe he got hired in 89 and finished the academy in 90. And then he went until right after I graduated the academy, 2018. So he had just shy of 30 years.
So was he your influence for going police side and thinking about going police side when you went to the military?
Absolutely. Yeah. Grew up watching Dad, all the cool things he did, talked about how he helped, all the people stay away from the bad guys, lock the bad guys up. Talked about how, just the relationship with people in the community he worked in, trying to keep them out of trouble, trying to convince people of doing the right thing. And, was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. Be a part of that. Be just like Dad. And then,
but at the same time, he's volunteering in Chile as a fireman, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah.
If he had to do it over again, what do you think? Do you think he would have tried to gone?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think he always wanted to be a cop, and he's very proud of it. Loved being a cop. Still loves talking about it. He still works part-time with a police agency. Keeps him connected, which is great. But I don't know if he would change it. I remember there was a time where he talked about taking the fire test. I do remember that. I think he had 20 years in at that point, if not more.
Yeah.
And he considered, taking the fire test. I remember my parents talking about it. I don't know if I was supposed to hear the conversation or not. And I just remember them saying that they couldn't take, the pay cut. They wouldn't be able to take the pay cut because at the time he may have been an investigator. And when Dad made an investigator, I think when he first went to homicide, it was a pretty small unit. And the amount of homicides they went to back then, less than now, but the ratio of homicides to investigators then was beyond taxing. I wouldn't see Dad for days, weeks at a time working a case, especially when he was working overnights. So part of that too was like, man, Dad's gone 20 minutes away. I don't see him for a week at a time.
It's almost like if you want, it's like, what is it? The Chicago Trauma Center. If you want to be a good trauma nurse, a trauma doctor, you go to Chicago. If you want to be a good homicide investigator, you would come to Rochester, type of thing. You were going to get it.
I think it was like his first homicide that he worked. We didn't see him for days to a week. And when we did, it was like he stopped in and said, hey, because he wanted to see us. And I went back to work or took a nap, went back to work. And the first time you really saw him was on the news. They did a newscast when they finally got the suspect. And every single one of them are standing up there next to the police chief, just looking like zombies because they haven't slept for 5 days straight trying to catch this guy.
So then you have your uncle, who did what, 30-something years?
30 years, yep.
30. Yeah, he did 30,
yeah. He got hired in 88, and then he went till
88.
88, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story for a different time. Some from his retirement party, but yeah, he got hired in 88, and then he retired. It might have been the very beginning of 19 or right at the end of 18. It was wintertime. I remember that.
Yeah.
Because he had this super cool old school winter coat that they issued the guys back then that he got when he was brand new. And he brought it to the retirement party for me to try on. Well, I tried it on. I thought I was supposed to take it home. My poor uncle had to walk home, walk to the car without a winter coat.
Now, we didn't say it, your uncle was on the job as a fireman. So you had your dad, police officer, uncle, fireman. There had been some good interfamily rivalries going on in that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Uncle pretty happy you made the right choice.
Yeah. 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 He loved it. He still
Yeah.
does.
He's a ball buster. He's like
They both are.
Yeah, but his uncle's more the
He's clever. He's clever
that's
with
what
it.
he's like a sniper.
Oh yeah.
He'll hit you when you're not even expecting it, type of thing.
And then he doesn't let up.
No.
He doesn't let up.
So, you got on the job in when?
2018.
How was the academy? How was your academy experience?
I loved the part of once you got to fire side. We started with EMT. We did EMT for 2 months, 2.5 months, or whatever. And we started fire. Coming from the background of volunteering, you're ecstatic to have the dream job. There were times where it's kind of frustrating, but you understand the process of going through the basics again because you got people coming off the street that can't spell firefighter. But once we got into the meat and potatoes and you finish firefighter, when you start to do more skills, it was a blast every day. You get to just train all day, every day. We had some great instructors with some insane experience that just showed us, this is what we got to do to get through the academy. And then we were lucky we had vacants, decent amount of vacants for my class when we went through. And he would just take us, the main lead instructor would take us out there with the adjuncts and the other full-time instructors, and we would be there all day long, just learning about, everything fire, building construction, how it's going to travel, and the homes we're going to be working in, ladders, everything. And that was fun.
So did your volunteer time, that kind of push you towards making the switch in your mind of
100%. I think the only thing that changed me, I shouldn't say the only thing, but the big thing that changed me away from the police side was there was a case down south. I don't remember if it was Florida or something like that. I just remember, I don't even know what the whole outcome was. Some guy was wrestling a cop for the gun. Gun pulled out the gun and shot him in the head, and it caused riots everywhere. And at the time, just being the son of a cop, I was pro-cop. I took the cop's word for what happened. I still have no idea if he was right or wrong, but I was like, ooh, man, this guy just did his job, and he just got fired for it, or he has to quit or whatever. I was like, I don't want that. Maybe I don't want to be a cop. And then it just continued from there. And as we've seen, it's beyond continued. So
those years, that time around was like 16, 17, 18 and on up till now, it's like they are under, we're starting to be a little bit more under a microscope with stuff, but man,
not like that.
It's not like them. There's no way I could do it. There's not a shot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jobs I can't do. Corporate, like my brother-in-law, like the other side of the friends, like just reading the script of Office Space through my textbook, what they're talking about.
Different world with our lifestyle.
It's unreal.
Totally different world.
So you get out of the academy. How does your city do their rotations for like through their probation period, or is it a set amount of time? Is it just because of or is it manpower dependent?
No, it's almost always a set amount of time. You've got to do time at an engine and truck. We run engines and trucks, technically quints, but again, another conversation. We work them as trucks, and usually it depends on the class. With COVID and stuff, they changed a few things around because less time for hands-on, blah blah blah. But it's usually 2 to 3 months on each, and that'll usually bring you to the end of the year, and then your probation's up and you get an assignment. Sometimes, like this class, they just graduated a little bit early, so they'll be at hopefully their permanent assignments for a little bit before the end of the year, and their probation's up. But you do 2 to 3 months at each. And it doesn't matter which one you can start at. You can start at the truck and go to the engine, or vice versa.
Back to your how many weeks is your academy?
Oh boy, is
it dependent without the EMT, just the fire side?
Might have been 15. I want to say 15 sounds about right.
But you guys put it like an extra week of like your department SOGs in there, right?
Right. Yeah, they do the last week. I don't know when they fit it in now, but I know for mine, our final week was SOG for the department.
So like
a written test, you get, pop question, tactical things, stuff like that.
So you've helped out with our county academy as a county instructor.
Yep.
So would you say the county academy is kind of on par with, I'm not saying with the,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Content,
I think every, around here, people that are running academies are doing it to their department's good standards. The way we're all doing things are very different. That's the one thing I'll give you guys that is super frustrating is you still have 5, sometimes 6 different departments or more mixed into your academy.
Yeah.
Some of them are riding with one person on the fire truck, and the others are riding with full staffing at 4. And you're trying to teach everybody the same standard. And I think you guys are doing a pretty good job of it from what I saw. I was honored to be asked to even come out this year, but that was pretty cool to see how that worked.
That was one of
a headache and a half.
When I was a training officer, and that kind of was thrown into our lap with the other training officer from the department up north, who's now battalion chief. That was one of our biggest things, was how do we bridge the gap between, our department, his department, and another department that are running 4-man companies, and then we bring in these other departments that have 2-man companies, 1-man companies, or they have 3 or just 3 guys a shift. It's like,
right.
So, at least with your city academy, it's very, this is the way we're doing it. This is how we're going to teach. And
and the one frustrating thing is that the state, New York State, OFBC, whatever we want to call them, they have, I don't want to say tied our hands, but I think share a similar opinion on them of you kind of tie your hands to what you can and cannot teach in the fire academies. So most people are on par with doing the same stuff, same curriculum. And then you guys do the same thing with us. You bring out the right people to teach them. This is the state. I'm going to mix in the stuff that's going to make you safer and more effective.
Yeah,
and I think you guys do a good job of that. You still got people that were teaching your academy now out there. So that's cool to see.
Yeah, and that's the way you have to do it. Yeah,
that's what's wild is that you just mentioned that very point. It's the stuff that you can teach and the stuff that you cannot teach. And I don't think anybody really has a problem with what you can teach. That cannot teach is a timed sequence. So in other words, like when you get to truck week, there's certain things that they tell you cannot teach us during truck week. So we do the old little blessing and say, okay, Thursday truck week's over. Congratulations. Friday's a free for all. And then we teach a little extra so that we I'm not saying we skirt the rules. That's not what I'm trying to drive at. It's just that we give you a bonus day on top of it. But during that time frame of learning the truck class curriculum and taking that exam, we don't want to, you can't be confused. And I think that's a big portion of it.
Super frustrating part of this. Super frustrating part of now being a part of the instructor realm. I'm not saying what's being taught is wrong, but sometimes it just, the bureaucracy of changing things, it's just outdated. Or it doesn't apply to us at all. Or it doesn't apply to us at all because it's meant for somebody else.
I sat through, I went down to, it's now called Training Days. It's not called Andy Frederick's Training Days anymore because Andy Frederick, that conference was started to make a college fund and for the kids. Now the kids are grown up, so they don't need a college fund anymore. So they just call it Training Days. Besides the point. But I sat through, one of the lectures was a training officer from Denver, Colorado. And one of they were the same frustrations we're talking about with the state in Colorado was the curriculum. Now, I've never been to Colorado, but I can imagine a Midwest flyover state where you have huge metropolitan areas like Denver. And then you get outside that metropolitan area and then it's nobody.
Right.
So, and that state has to teach to the state's curriculum is to the entire state what he was saying. So what Denver did, I think there's 3 major metropolitan cities. They kind of created a consortium and they started writing their own curriculum. They kind of gave the middle finger to their version of OFPC. And then what they did is that they went to Pro Board, the national certification. They gave them their curriculum. They gave them their skill sheets, and Pro Board gave them the blessing. So now, instead of a state certificate, they've completed all the GPRs that NFPA says you have to be a fireman, and then they get Pro Board national certifications because Pro Board has vetted their curriculum. So they've leapfrogged their own state curriculum. And I was having that conversations with guys around here. It's a lot of work, and I almost think the way
it's got to get done though.
It's got to get done, but there's, like you said, the bureaucracy in the state is they have their talons in it, and it's it would take a lot of work to get done, but I think it's at the point where it needs to get done. And I think like cities like Buffalo and Rochester, Syracuse, I think they probably could pull it off a little bit easier than the county, because like you said, our county department, the county academy, I should say, we're teaching to 5, 6 different departments at once.
Right.
Where you guys have your own SOGs, SOPs, it's your academy, you're doing the same thing. It's almost like what Buffalo did with flips. They kind of gave the state the middle finger. They said, we're not sending our guys to the FDNY for flips. We have our own thing, and we're going to do it. You can actually find the paper online. Your former Chief Caulfield. It's a pretty long paper proposal that he was trying to get flips just for like a Rochester version of flips for you guys.
No kidding.
It's online. I read it before, and obviously he retired now, so I don't think it ever gained legs, but he was trying to get it done. Because if you ever get the, if you're ever in the position to promote and you go to flips, I always tell guys in New York State, there's a law that says once you get promoted to the first line supervisor, some departments it's lieutenant, some departments it's captain. It all depends on how your departments are, how your rank structure is. But as soon as you get promoted to a first line supervisor, the state law says you must attend the Flips Academy and its first line supervisor training program. It doesn't spell out Flips, FLIPS. It's FL, whatever, Flip, first line supervisor training program. You must attend it and it says in the FDNY. That's what the law says. So there's guys that just don't want to go to New York City. I get it. New York City's not for everybody, but I tell them, go down there and soak up everything you can and make it good. I had a great time at Flips. Got in some trouble on some weekends with my wife, but that's because I had a couple frat brothers that live in New York City, and it wasn't good. But there's guys that go down to Flips and they blow it off and they say it's a shitty time, and I didn't learn anything. They got truck companies with 6 guys. We have this. We don't operate like that. It's like, I understand we don't operate like that, but there's nuggets of knowledge you can pick up.
Yeah, you can always pull that stuff out.
Yeah.
And like going to the sports stuff too. It's it's kind of that rite of passage. I've heard a couple of senior officers in my department talk about too. Like, I get it, but at the same time, all these great bosses that led you, that are still leading, they did it. It's kind of that rite of passage.
Yeah, Stu, who just retired.
Ticket to them.
I went to Flips with Stu, who he just retired. Engine? Was he Engine 13?
He retired a captain of 13s. Yeah.
Captain of 13s. Yeah. I was in Flips with him and with Steve. I don't know if he's made. I don't want to say his last name. I could text you his last name. Starts with a W.
Starts with a W.
I don't even know how to spell it.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. Yep.
Him and Stu. Yep.
Yeah.
But Stu's a country bumpkin dude.
Oh, yeah.
He hated the city.
Yep.
But he went
and had a good time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah.
I mean, he picked up, everybody picked up some stuff. I had a great class. Right. We were one of the last integrated classes. And when I say integrated, the FDNY would put 10 guys that promoted the Wednesday before. They would start Flips on that Monday. And then there would be 10 of us out of New York City guys. They would call us upstaters in that class. Yeah. And now it's moved more towards all upstaters in one class. But yeah, like I said, you make it what it is down there. But yeah, Stu, another good story about Stu. So a good family, my dad's best friend was like, I think they built Engine 13 around him. He's passed now, so I can mention his name, Dave Bowney. And
I've heard the name. Dave
was Stu's senior guy at Engine 13.
Mm-hmm.
And Stu was telling me his first fire, Dave had a rescue, pulled a kid out of fire. His first fire coming off probation. And that was kind of cool just to have Stu there at Flips with me. It's just, small world.
Small world in the fire service.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
It's a hell of a lot smaller the longer you stick around.
Yeah, it really does.
I heard somebody say that about the Marine Corps once, and I was like, yeah, the longer I've been on the fire service, they're right. Everything gets smaller the longer you stay in it.
Yep. It's true.
So so you had let's say you were in the Marines, you got out of boot camp. How long were you out of boot camp before you got on the job? You started the academy.
A little over 3 years. All
right, I think I know the answer to this because I remember when you got out of boot camp, you were skinny as a rail. You were physically
Yeah, I know.
fit.
Look at me.
I
Look at
mean,
my
you
double
dropped a
chins on the
ton.
camera.
You dropped a ton of weight. But do you feel that gave you a little bit more preparation, including with your time in the all the different sports that you played? Did that prepare you enough for the academy, or did you feel like you were underprepared physically and mentally?
Physically, you can always do more to be better and prepared physically. There were some pure athletes in my class, down to the people that couldn't do a couple push-ups. But the thing that the military does, especially the Marine Corps, is the mental strength. And that's a big thing that I think we're talking about with sports, is I think that's the thing that's lacking in the people coming through the academies is the mental resiliency to, even if it's not physical pain, it's just like, I don't want to do this, I'm done. Oh, I'm not going to keep putting effort in because I did the bare minimum, versus just that thing of, yep, this is it, got to keep going, or I don't want to be seen as the bottom of the barrel, I'm going to keep going. I think that's what really set me up for success was going through the military. I was raised like that, my grandpa was Vietnam vet, and dad, uncle, family being in the first responder world, but the Marine Corps 100% instilled that in me, because the way I was growing up, I would not be where I am now if I had not joined the Marine Corps. I was not as,
What do you think the toughest thing was for the whole class during your academy?
For the entire class, or for me, you're saying?
Yeah, give me an example. No, for the entire class, give me an example where that resiliency worked in your favor versus somebody that just off the street.
It probably ended up being the days you do PT and then going to just doing the skills or whatever. I think having the background of volunteering helped a ton too, but you watch us start getting in trouble at the end of the day for stuff. You're doing push-ups, you're doing this and that. I went through the academy with a good friend, luckily, who was in my unit in the Marines with me. And we were like mental psychotic freaks. We'd look over at each other laughing and smiling, trying not to get caught as we're listening to the guy next to you whimper or whatever because they can't do so many push-ups. That's the time where it really paid off. I couldn't do 9 million push-ups either, but at the same time, I was like, this might hurt. Whatever, it stops eventually.
Yeah, it's good to have somebody to go through that with, or at least you become friends with somebody there, and it just becomes a game. That's how you get through it all.
Oh, it totally was, yeah.
So you mentioned something and it's popped into my head, and I've noticed it with our academies. Not discrediting volunteer fire. I was volunteer as well, and I was volunteer when I went through the academy. But I have noticed, and I can't correlate anything. It's got to be the person, because we get some people that have tons of experience as a volunteer, and then they're crappy in the academy. Like they don't listen. They think they know more than what you're talking about because of their volunteer time. And then we pull somebody off the street who has zero fire. Like you said, they don't even know what a fire truck looks like. They took a test. They thought it was a good job. Now they're a fireman, and they become some of the best guys in the academy, and they become some of the best firemen that we have.
Yep.
But on the same token, we got some guys that have never been in, like you said, can't spell the fire service, can't do anything, never thrown a ladder in their life, and they still can't throw a ladder. They're mutts.
Yeah.
And you have some volunteers that come on the job and they just want to be the best there is. And so did you experience, did that happen in the academy where you had some volunteer guys that were just
happening?
It's still
still happening. And somebody used the phrase in our academy, in every academy, that, every single one of you, I think even in boot camp, every single one of you has already been here. The name's just different. And they're not wrong.
Yeah.
They're not wrong. Until I started going out to the help out with the academy myself, I was like, they are not wrong. That's my classmate, so-and-so over there, different name in this class. That's so-and-so that in, whatever group right there, It's like, holy cow, what do you know? The people instructed us knew what they were talking about. Who would have guessed?
Right.
What was PT like?
Damn, I was just going to ask that.
Oh, sorry. Beat you to it.
So there was a guy that did PT for the city in the years or a few years leading up to when I got hired. And he was, I don't want to say being phased out, but he was turning his company, the contract, over to a younger guy the year before me. And I guess that guy smoked people. Like it was good PT. The problem with good PT is we have a trash physical agility to get on. So you can get somebody that passes the agility to get on, and basic PT is going to break them, whether it be a mentality or a legit just physical deficiency. because they were led into a job being told this is what you have to do to get hired, and it's not right. To me, civil service, New York State, because I know it's not the city that wants it, especially the instructors, they want to change. It's not fair to that individual. It's not right. It's not right to tell somebody this is what you're going to do. All you have to do is pass this and you can go get hired. Well, when you can run or jog even for 7 minutes, and then a week later you go to the fire academy and you're putting up a 28-foot, even just a 24-foot for some people, ladder 35, you're going to get hurt. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt somebody else. It's just not right.
I could be wrong, but I always thought the original conception of the CPAT was the physical test to get on the job. It wasn't. I don't think the original idea behind the CPAT was like your final exam to graduate. I thought that was okay. You take a test, you scored high enough. Now we're gonna put you in the CPAT, and if you pass the CPAT, now you go to the academy.
Right.
To me, I think that's a better sequence of saying, like you said, it's not fair to guys that are coming into the academy physically fit and mentally ready to do the academy, because now the academy PT, at least in the county academy, the PT in the morning or the afternoon, whatever the training instructor, their mind is for that class, it's like PT is geared towards beating the CPAT. It's not geared towards let's be in physically fit to do the job. It's like, okay, we're going to do these movements because we want to beat the CPAT.
Exactly. You said, the academy captain now says, he doesn't say these specific movements, but you do this PT, I don't got to worry about the CPAT. And he was talking to somebody from, might have been Buffalo, some other bigger department. And he said, what do you guys do for PT or this and that with CPAT? He goes, we just do XYZ PT and we do a practice CPAT every week as one of the days of PT. He goes, I don't got to worry about anybody failing the CPAT. And that's why. It's just the way they train their people. They're not training them to pass the CPAT. The CPAT practice is for the instructor's peace of mind. They don't got to focus on somebody. And for the student's peace of mind, I'm not going to lose my job at the end of the academy.
Right.
It has nothing to do with physically endorsing them or enhancing them.
We probably wouldn't have the pool of firemen that we had, or pool of candidates we have now, if we put the CPAT in the front.
No.
And say it's
not a shot.
Definitely wouldn't. But it would make people, I got to pass the CPAT now.
Yeah.
They would get ready.
And then you wouldn't have. They can do that CPAT, and we can do what the cops do and say, took the test. This isn't mandatory, but we're going to be doing some practice PT. You want to check and see if you're ready to go? You come out and do this. And they give it to them real. They either do the exact same PT physical fitness test, or after they do the one, they kind of, write people's names down and say, hey, they start grooming their people early. I don't know why the hell we don't do that.
Well, they have a test-in phase as well, though, for physical fitness. It's
right. So
it's
you have
very,
to do a
very mild.
test.
But they have that. So after you score, then you get called to do the physical, and then based off of how well you do that, so you got to keep passing these gates before you can get to the academy.
No, even
the same thing. Like
correct, but even before that, they say if you're interested, you think you want to be a cop, come take these workouts. It's like the military.
Stop yeah. They do have the.
Say, we don't do that. We just say take our test. We got the best job in the world. Blah.
Yeah, they call them work sessions or something.
Physical agility to get hired, or you jog for 7 minutes like a 14-year-old. And then you come do one of the most physically, we can't call ourselves industrial athletes and not prepare the people that want to come into this line of work to expect that and train their body to at least know what's coming.
You're right.
If we're getting people that can't do a single, if we can't do a single push-up, if you can't do whatever parameter, but you can jog 7 minutes, you're setting somebody up to get injured. That's not fair to them, because then they don't graduate the academy.
It's not fair to them.
If they had a blue collar job, they can't go back to work.
It's not only not fair to them, it's also not fair to the 17, 20 other
1,
candidates that are in the academy, because now you either have to dumb down the PT to bring that person up, or you have to concentrate, you have to individualize it. All right, come over here, Johnny. We're going to do some separate PT for now they're separate from the group. It doesn't make for a good a good conducive learning environment or class setting. But
Right.
what popped in my head was, and it was before you got on the job in your city, and it was a big union deal and a big problem. It was PT in your academy, but also, I don't know if you remember hearing about it. They used to do the CPAT for your city before you got on. And then when they went to do the actual proctored CPAT by OFPC, there was people like, well, I already passed the CPAT. I'm not doing it again.
Right.
And that created a whole issue with your department. And there was also another union issue about PT, whether they're not getting paid or not.
A real quick aside from all this, so we're right now we're discussing the physical fitness standards for the fire service, and right now it's the career side, and this is just to get in the door. You know, how does this translate to the volunteer world? Should there be similar standards? Lou and I were just talking about the TOAC, which came out of Western New York. It's very similar to a mini CPAT, but it's not. It's just a pass fail. There's no grading standard. There's no time commitment to it.
That's literally it. There's no
What's
minimum.
Your thoughts?
It's a tough one. I mean, I remember going through Firefighter 1, and it was back when they did the 2-week boot camp. And now there's too many hours that they can't get, expect people to take 3 weeks off of work and whatnot. But, there was still physical punishment for messing things up. What I went through in 2013, whatever it was. You didn't do a skill right. You didn't meet a timeline, followed by push-ups or something like that.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore.
Right. And I think part of that led to people knowing, and then I shouldn't say, maybe it's because I'm younger and I didn't recognize it until now, but the understanding of how physically fit we really need to be around here is kind of a newer thing within the past 5 years, I would even say. Like up until 5 years ago, it was still just, I'm strong, my bottle lasts this long. Like now we know the science behind it, and I'm saying science very loosely, of the stuff we need to do to be better industrial athletes. The volunteers are aware of it, but there's no standard unless your individual department sets one. And I know that a lot of departments don't have a set standard. I think it comes down to that instructor, that officer, training division, whatever, that says we don't have a standard, but this is how long we usually work, and you're expected to keep up. But that's to Lou's point, it's hard because now you're doing it for every single individual at a very different level.
It's a double-edged sword in the volunteer fire service too, because you want the guys to be fit, you want the guys to be healthy, but at the same time, if you set a standard, they're volunteering their time, man. It's
right.
Especially the way the world is now. You got people working, at least 2 jobs, if not 3 jobs, and you expect them to show up to the firehouse for calls, and they got kids sports and everything else. It's all right. When are we going to get a chance to work out? And I don't know, I've been out of the volunteer service for a while now, but maybe one drill night a month, hey, we're going to do a PT session, light PT, just floating the, and it doesn't have to be anything grueling, but, easy movements, stuff like, body weight exercises, just calisthenics, hey, we're going to get together. We're going to do some PT, tonight. That's drill tonight.
Yeah.
But I digress. So you're out of the academy. You did your 3 months on an engine, 3 months on a truck. I know the answer.
No, you're hoping for the answer.
But what one did you like the best?
I couldn't catch a cold on my temp time. The most I did was a couple nonsense fires that were snuffed out on the truck or very small. It was nothing. I didn't catch anything at Engine 7. That was brutal. The only thing I did do at Engine 7 was CPR. Man, I did a lot of CPR in my short time at Engine 7. Holy cow. Holy cow. It was insane. So I went back to the Engine 1. I was kind of promoted to do some engine time before I moved across to the truck. But I had a blast with my crew. The crew that brought me in under their wing. Stu was the boss. We had a great time. That's why I went back to Engine 7 right away. Fun district, busy. There were nights you'd show up at 4 in the afternoon because we still doing day and nights when I got hired. And you would run 14, 18 calls a night. You didn't do any fires, just because I couldn't catch a cold. But, man, just busy. And then there were nights you didn't do anything. But it was just fun. It was just a fun district. And right before I left on military the following year, we caught a couple fires. But That was it. I always knew I think I wanted to move to a truck, but originally I had a lot of fun on the engine, especially being busy.
Was college first due for Engine 7?
33s is now, but yeah, it was.
Back then?
Yep.
Back then?
Yeah, it was Engine 8 too, but, it depends on who was driving and whatnot, but yeah.
Yeah.
In their district, yep.
What made you decide to go across the floor onto the truck?
Honestly, the craziest thing was I knew I wanted to do it. I just didn't know when. I was always told, do 5 years, X amount of time, whatever, before you do it. And I enjoyed working with my crew. Nobody had any real plans to leave. I was like, I'll do time here with them, and then, when a spot opens up, I'll go on my group specifically. For some reason, before I left for the military, I was out at it was my uncle's retirement party. A boss there that had worked with my uncle for years pulled me aside, and they all worked on truck 6. I thought he said, I want you should put a card in for truck 10. I don't know where this came from. I don't know if somebody knew I wanted to go to truck 10 or what. I don't even remember how it started. And I was like, all right, it's kind of weird. And my aunt standing there next to him because she knew him through my uncle, all these years. And my aunt looked at me and said, you need to put a card in. And I was like, what the shit? Why is my Aunt Lisa telling my aunt's telling me to put a card in? What am I doing wrong? I guess I got to go put a card in. It's just funny that my aunt, of all people, only connected through marriage and, her brother before he passed away, unfortunately, was telling me to put a card in. I'm like, I guess I got to do it. I knew it was a typical thing. I was very young, brand new. I walked in, to the senior guy. Start the senior guy, I want to put a card in, whatever. He goes, well, you're too young, we kind of have to accept your card, but I'm not looking at you. I was like, okay, I'm going to stand in line. I'm going to stand in line now. And that's another thing that you don't see from, and I haven't been on that long, not even 7 years. Nobody has cards in to work at these busy firehouses. You talk to the guys like Stu, there was a line around the county to work at those busy companies back then. Now they're begging people to work for them. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But, digress going back, I was like, all right, I'll stand in line. I'm okay with being a part of the process. I want to earn my spot here, and when I eventually did get there, it was over, people getting blown up from disagreements in the firehouse. So, some guys might say, yeah, you only got sent there to fill a spot or whatever, but I'd like to think I earned my spot there to a certain extent.
So the senior guy had influence on the company like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wish, and that's, you've seen it in the county, right? It's just the exponential growth in our county right now.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's,
but it's the same thing for us now. There's companies with senior guys with less time on than me, and I use the term senior guys very loosely, just representing a time thing. When I got hired only 6 years ago, we were talking about this. My coworker and I had a call the other day waiting for the boss to come back. When we got hired, almost every single company had at least one person with like 20 years on or more. Now you get maybe 5 guys on some groups with 20 years or more. And it's no discredit to them. It's just the change is insane. A lot of firehouses, 3 years and down, minus the boss.
Did you have to interview with the captain of the house or the captain of the company?
Yes. So whenever you put a card into the city, you got to go to, you got to get it signed by your boss, your battalion chief, and then the captain of your house. And then same thing with the house you want to go to, the boss of the crew you want to go to, and then the house captain. And when I went there, captain at the time, he still is the captain. I walked in, I said, I want to put a card in. It was specifically for Group 2 because that's who I wanted to work with. He said, okay, you want to work here? Cool. If you want to work here, you put a card in for all groups. You let me know you want to be here, not just with certain people. And I wasn't sure if it was a test or not. And but especially since I, got the spot and transferred groups, he's not wrong. People change, move, get out of there. You just want to be at the company. And retired guy, we'll use his name, John Greco. He goes, don't ever base your career off of who you're going to work with. They're going to leave. You're going to get promoted. They're going to get promoted, whatever. He goes, you go work at the busiest company you can be at. He goes, I don't care what you do. Take your gear on and off over and over again all day long. Yeah, you want to go to fire. Go to the busiest place possible. And it doesn't matter what group. Who cares if you like them? You're going on calls.
I almost had that same conversation with Bobby when he was at Truck 6.
Mm-hmm.
And he was contemplating on whether or not to put his card in for the rescue. And he's saying, I like my crew, I like my group. His boss was Bagley at the time. And I said to him, I go, Bobby, I said, you really think Baggs is going to be a company officer for his entire career?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what do you mean? I go, that dude is going to be, he's going to move up at some point.
Right.
He's not going to be your boss forever. Your
Yeah.
crew's not going to be your boss forever. I said, at some point, you're probably going to want to be a boss. You also want to work on the rescue. You go, they're not going to promote. If you never do time on the rescue and you promote, you're never going to be on the rescue because they're not going to put they're not going to put a lieutenant that's never worked on the rescue onto the rescue unless they're, I'm guessing they have to detail an officer over, but you're never going to be assigned to the rescue if you've never worked on the rescue.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of put a light bulb up in his head and says, yeah, put my card in type of thing. But to your point, the groups change, bosses promote, bosses retire, which going to the busy company, that's what you should strive to do. You shouldn't want to sit there and be at a slow company and just rot away.
Yeah. This whole thing of putting your time in, I get it, but yeah, I hate to say it, but fuck that. Go to the busiest company you can right away. Go earn your keep. You're not going to do it in the slow house. Got hired to be a fireman. Go work where firemen work, go into fires.
That's, and that's one thing I think where New York State, you look at other states across the country, and it's almost like New York State, when you get into because it used to be so hard to get in the fire department. And once you got in, you didn't leave. So you didn't really get a chance to, my department, we're not running as much fires as you guys, but it's like, shit, if I don't know if I'm going to be able to get on a job somewhere else. So I guess I'm here and I'm going to put my 20 in or 25 or how many years I can, get on and off the rig. But you look at these other guys down south and like the Carolinas or Virginia or whatever, they just like, oh, this job's slow. I'm transferring to a different department. It's almost so much easier to get to a different
firefighters. They're like travel firefighters.
And I think that has to do with, just the way our pension system's set up here and civil services here. It's just, you're tied to the department, which it's not a bad thing. You're loyal to the job. You put your time in, you create, you make your department better here. But sometimes it's like, man, I wish I could just, go where the fires are.
Oh, I hear you.
It's the same advice I give to the guys looking to get on the job. How bad do you want that job? We're seeing right here in our region, just in our county, and maybe just a little tangentially, we're hiring a lot, or at least that's what it seems like. It's not that we're hiring more. We are doing a little bit of expansion, but it's because of the sheer volume and population. But we've had a lot of retirements, so we have to fill these numbers.
Yeah.
Right now we have openings. We've only had openings. That's going to trickle off. That tap is going to shut off eventually. Mm-hmm. But there are other places in this state, especially where I live, way out west. There's one big department. That's it. And everybody hopes that they can get on that job. Well, they don't hire in mass quantities.
Right.
So you have guys that have been waiting 10, 12 years hoping they get the call, but they also don't live in the city.
Yeah.
In our area, you got to live in that district to get hired, and it's the same thing. They're just waiting. They really, really want it. And there's a heavy volunteer population out there. But I'm like, man, if you guys want it bad enough, you got to go to where it's not that we get more fires, but you got to go where the work is.
Right.
If you want it bad enough and come here, it's not that far of a jog. I do it, but go there, take the test, get an address, live there for a bit, see if you like it, do the whole thing. Yeah. If you still, it doesn't sound like your cup of tea, fly down south or take a drive down there, start taking exams. You got to go everywhere. Don't sit around and wait for the one department that's never going to call you. But you got to make moves.
Yeah. And to me, I don't know how to say this without phrasing it in a somewhat offensive way, but to the guys that just sit around for the spot that isn't, either cream of the crop, fires, just saying, oh, I'm waiting to get hired. They don't really want the job. They want the benefits. They don't want the job. They just want the perks that come with it. The guys that are going to get hired somewhere for a good spot for the right reasons, they're doing what you're saying. They're either sticking around or they're going where they can and putting their foot in the door and then moving where they want to.
Did you try any other place other than the city? Did you take tests all over?
I took the county test. Yep. I got offered a spot in the county actually before.
Did you really?
Yeah. Somebody said, "Hey, is your residency in XY town?" I said, "No." They said, "Do you want to make it there?" And I said, and I kind of understood they were hitting at. It was maybe a chief at the time. I said, I appreciate it, but I'm going to stick it out for the city because I'm hoping we're not far away.
Lou, what about you?
And I kind of kicked myself because I would have been on the job with a department for at least a year before I got called. But at the same time, would I be where I am right now? I don't know.
Tough.
Yes. So I took the City of Rochester test, and I was on the job here for 6 months. And at the time when I got hired in our department, our starting pay, I think it was like $15,000 more than what the City of Rochester starting pay was. And then you had the 6 month bump, which is like another, a grand or whatever. So at the time I was like 6 months on the job. I took the county test and the city test. I think they're always opposite years at that point. There's, the county test was 1 year, the city test is the next year. So I take the county test. I get hired by our department. Well, I take the county test, and within that year, the city test came out. So I take the city test. I get on in our department in September of 2007. By March, it was then, it would have been, I think a year or so passes. The city of Rochester sends me a canvas letter. It was one of the only years that you didn't need a city address to get on the job. And I just closed on my house at the time, and there was it was a financial move at the time. I don't kick myself for not going to the city. It's one of those things, like you look back and it's like, what would my career have looked like? The city sent me canvas letters. Yep. Send this back. You're hired. Academy starts at whatever. And at the time it was I want to say it was like a $15,000 pay cut.
Yeah. It's a big chunk of change.
Overnight. And like I said, I just closed on the house, and there's no way I would have foreclosed on my house at the time. I wouldn't be able to afford it. The only other test I signed up for, I did sign up for the FDNY test, and because if anybody's ever taken I don't know if they still do it, but they send you an admission card. It's almost like a postcard. And like I mentioned, I had fraternity brothers that live in the city. I actually have one that lives like a block away from where the testing site is. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay with you. It's like, yeah, we'll make a weekend of it type of thing. I'm like, all right, cool. Waiting for the postcard. I'm like, bags are packed. I'm hoping the postcard comes. The test is on a Saturday. It's Friday. No postcard in the mail. I call them up. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't have my admission thing. I'm not coming down. My postcard, the admission, it got lost in the mail. It came 2 weeks after the test was administered.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, whatever. I love my job here. Everything happens for a reason. If I went down there, I probably wouldn't have been married to my wife and 3 good kids. But it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah, Mike, it was actually your uncle was the one that convinced me to try for here. This was not my plan, try where I'm at now. And well, I don't know. What's it like? I didn't know Lou at the time or anything. And, so I signed up for the test, took that test. But in the meantime, I went everywhere. I drove all over down south, just taking tests. And it's funny, you guys were talking about the CPAT earlier. One of them, I think it was Raleigh. You go down there, you take the written, they score it. You take it in the morning, by afternoon, they score it, and they rank you in a weird order. So it's not like 0 through 100 type of thing, and they give you a raw score like that. It was like a weird block category, and then it gave you X amount of points. And wherever those points landed was like, I want to say the max could have been like 30 points or something. Based off of where you scored, then they invited you. It was either a yes or no to move on to the next few days. They would schedule you for what was essentially a CPAT on steroids. And then you went and did that. So you drove down to their fire academy. You did this crazy CPAT. And then based off of what you scored with time and performance, you gained more points. And then they ranked it. So if they were only hiring 300 people, there was thousands of people taking this thing, and they were only taking 300, you knew by the end of 4 days if you were getting the offer or not. It was wild.
Yeah. New York State
But
Civil
they did
Service
that
gotta
whole
get that
CPAT thing
program.
beforehand.
Justin was telling me when he was looking for jobs everywhere. This is when he was still a dispatcher here. He, I think it was Wilmington, Delaware. Same thing. It was like a beefed up CPAT. He said, and this is after he graduated the fire academy here. He said this physical test was 10 times harder than a CPAT. Then after that, he had like a oral interview with like all the battalion chiefs and the deputy chiefs of the department. Like you're sitting at a desk and you're just surrounded, there's a bunch of white shirts in front of you grilling you questions about, whatever the interview process was. I thought that was an interesting way of doing an interview for a civil service job. Quick. Yeah. So back to your time on the job, besides the CPR calls, any other in your probationary period or your first couple years that stood out?
No, I mean, like I said, I couldn't catch a freaking cold when I first got there. The first real, I guess only tip fire because I'm on the truck now, that I got was on a work sub for somebody on Group 4. I was all excited. I would have caught it with my uncle. My uncle was actually off that night, so I didn't get to see him. But, the only time I caught a tip fire, it was a small crap bathroom fire. And outside of that, I was on the hydrant for the other fires. Good fires, great crew, learned a lot. But it's like, man, I guess this is my life. Huh? That's all guys want. Be on a tip for a great fire on their temp time when they're new and young, or be on the irons on the truck or something. Man, it just didn't come for a while. Even when I got my spot on truck 10, busiest fire truck in the city, I didn't catch anything for 18 months. Every time I was off, boom, they catch a blower. Every time I'm off the work sub, boom, they catch a blower. It was brutal. I remember, again, on a work sub, back on Group 2 now, go to a fire on Jefferson Terrace. First fire we caught, and 13's is ahead of us were pulling up, and I can see the glow. 13's boss calls it out working fire, and our boss is calling on scene what he's going to do. And I don't know if he was keyed up or if I actually said it all, but I think I yelled out, "Fucking finally," as we're pulling up to the front of the house. And again, it happened that one. The guy in the tip had a problem with his face piece. It was a 1.5. He jumped over us to get out. And the boss turned around and said, "Oh, tip is yours." So like,
there you go. Right. There you go. He did all the work for you. So this question I'm going to ask you is going to lead to something else. You get some time on the job. When did you get like a probie under you or a junior guy under you? And when you did that change some of your responsibilities in the firehouse? Did the boss put some onus on you to mentor them a little bit? Or was that still under the guise of the guys more senior to you?
It might have been right away. It might have been the first year I was there because we had a great boss. Our senior guy at the time had about 10 years on, another great firefighter. I think we might have gotten a probie right away. We all got assigned there September, October after the blow up, and I think that year we might have had one. And if not, it was the next fall. And we've had them all ever since then. We're involved in the training from the bottom up. If you're there, only 4 or 5 spots on the rig, depending on staffing, might be floating out somewhere. But yeah, right away you're in charge of making sure they know the little nuances and stuff like that. The senior man's responsible for overall what they're seeing. But again, senior guys, when they're good at it, like mine was, are grooming you to take their spot because they know one day they're not going to be there. They'll teach them the first time, and then next new guy comes in, they want to see how you handle it. They jump in and fill in as needed and, crack the whip on you and yank the leash back when you mess up, because you will, and I did. Foot and mouth is a serious disease. Some of us just suffer from it more than others. And, so you're put into it right away. But the senior guy, boss, are the ones that are most responsible for it.
So that leads into when you started getting those responsibilities and instructing the probie guy, your new guys, did the light bulb go off in your head saying maybe I should take this to the next level and become an instructor? Or did you already have that in your head that you wanted to do that at some point?
No, I think it actually started back in the volunteers before I even got hired. Same thing, one of the problems that plagues the fire service and the volunteers, unfortunately, is the training position is, for some reason, usually the youngest person that wants to be an officer because it's the most time commitment. And I started doing that. I probably thought I was good at it. I was not. Looking back at it, if I go back in time, I smack the shit out of myself quite often. But that's where I realized I kind of like teaching. Mom's a teacher. Dad did FTO as a cop. So I think it might have just kind of been in my blood too that, and obviously my uncle does a ton of teaching and still does. So I think it might have maybe just been in the family. But that's when I kind of knew I liked it. And the military is actually where it really came to me, having, up to 15 guys under you at a time or more sometimes, people looking to you to teach things. I had a couple certifications where I was one of the few people responsible for teaching that thing to the entire company and then some. As I kind of enjoy doing this. And as you guys know, it just forces you to be a student more often, which I love. I love being challenged. I love having my knowledge. I don't want to say, how do I put this? I don't want my knowledge challenged, but I want my application of it, I guess, challenged. Not yours is wrong, but, why is that? Is there a better way to do it? Always trying to be better. So yeah, I think that's where I figured out where I wanted to do it.
In my experiences instructing, it definitely makes you a better fireman.
For
100%.
Sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
How long? So you did your temp time, put your card in a truck 10. How long did it take to get on truck 10?
Probably a little over a year. So I would have put the card in like the spring or summer of 19. I was gone for a year with military. I come home and I shouldn't say I lost. The spot went to a guy while I was gone. And then when I came back, a bunch more spots opened up and I got one of them. So
circle back to fitness. Circle back to the fitness, that filling in the truck 10. I
love it.
Yeah. It's like bare bones fitness. I think you might still have plates that are made out of
shit in the summertime. Oh my God.
I love it.
Yeah. You guys have seen me. I sweat. I seriously have to stage 2 or 3 shirts sometimes when I work out, especially in the summertime. It's like, you go to catch an EMS call and you're like, hi, Grandma, how are you? Drip all over her arm. You're like, I'm so sorry.
I think some of your fitness
equipment. Help me. I think you're dying.
I think you still got logs cut for plates there.
Oh yeah, we got some serious old cast iron plates.
Yeah, but
I love our gym. We got a great
still
gym.
Works. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's awesome.
It's not even a gym. It's just the back of the bay.
Next to the lumber yard. You hope he doesn't fall over. The bolts don't decide to go one day.
You back the truck in until you hear metal on metal, and you're like, okay, that's the gym.
Yeah, I smile every time we fill into that your firehouse. It's like, yeah, this is a man's gym right here. So, how many years? I apologize. I should know. How many years you got on now? You got hired in 18?
Yeah, a little over 6.
6 years?
A little over 6 now. Yep.
Do you guys rotate drivers, or is someone always driving that same driver?
Depends on the company, but usually for our company, mostly all of the groups as well do this. Number 1 driver, number 2 driver, and then fills in from there. So one guy drives almost all the time. If they're off or sick, number 2 will jump up, and you work in 3rd and 4th person to give them more time. Junior person almost never drives, and it's not a discredit thing to them. It's just they've got a lot more to learn and figure out beforehand, and then you just kind of work other people in as time comes. Oh, I know I'm coming up on being off, and so is going to the academy, or so-and-so got hurt, they're going to be out for a month. Guess what? We're going to do more driver training because your likelihood of getting put in the front seat is higher now.
What would you say the average years is for someone to start driver training?
Right now, it honestly could be as soon as you finish temp time. Not at our company, but there are companies with people that everybody's injured or there's just nobody there assigned. They're the one person besides the boss assigned there. You got somebody with 1 year on that has to drive. Now, bosses sometimes don't do that. And they'll take the overtimes at the floater sent to them to drive, which, sometimes kind of stinks for that person. But, think back to when you were a new guy. Do you want to, be on every position is great. You want to learn it, but you want to be on the tip. You want to be on the irons. It's not fair, I want to say, to that person to throw them into that. Sometimes you have to, and they're going to learn the job. But that's a huge responsibility to throw into them, especially with how the roads are these days. Throwing somebody that's not a confident driver or somebody that doesn't do well driving a massive fire truck into, I'm the Kia boys and nobody's stopping at red lights or anything anywhere in the world. That's a lot. Well, they had the stress of babies throwing moms out of windows at their first call as a house fire, and they're trying to drive to that. Oof. That's tough.
That's another thing. Everybody complains about kids these days. Not being mechanically inclined or do whatever the complaint is about this generation. But it's also a proven fact. It's proven that the kids are not getting their driver's licenses at 16 anymore.
No.
There's kids out there that don't have no need to drive because of Uber and everything else, and their friends drive. So you might have people that don't even have a driver's license, which you need to get on the job. But okay, so you need to get a driver's license to get on a job. You get one. You've never driven a car. You never owned a car. And now you're tasking them to put them behind the wheel of a what engines. I think the engine we just purchased is over $1 million apparatus with the price of everything going, going 55 miles an hour, or, I know you're not going 55 down some of the streets in the city, but, tight corners, like you said, you got the Kia boys doing what they do. And you got these kids, you got kids straight out of the academy that have less time driving anything. And now you're putting them in a fire truck. It's a recipe for disaster. I'm surprised we don't have more wrecks than we do now.
Better evac program at the beginning.
Yeah.
I've been a part of the evac portion, but the two hardest parts of the academy for the instructor: evac day and saw day. And I've witnessed the saw thing firsthand now, but I have been a part of the evac.
Yeah, saw day. That's
Mike and I just got stuck on this last class. Not stuck. We were both in. I
think my hips finally just reset. My hips finally just went back into place today.
Oh man, that was brutal, and that was after, I think, at the time that we were up on the roof with those students. I think at least 5 times we went through saws. Not just that, hey, here's how you started, okay, and go. We'll see you tomorrow type of thing. It was full days, 5 full days. We added a ton of stuff, anything down all the way down to the mechanics of it, to the actual operations and how to handle it and everything. And then you saw what was still being produced on day 6, essentially. That was tough.
Just the people not growing up with blue collar jobs, or even just doing it around the house. It's not as common.
Yeah, we were saying this before too.
Yeah. And now it's, Dad, who you hiring? When we were kids, even me, is, Dad, what's going on? You're going on. Get out there. You're working in the hole. Hold this. I said hold it. What's that? What's that?
You're holding a flashlight.
I said hold it. Damn
it. And it's tough. I go through this with my kids right now because their friends are doing what kids do these days, and I go out and I'm splitting wood, and I half use it as punishment, but I half use it as a life lesson. Come out here. You're not, my daughter, God bless her, she's awesome. She'll try to split wood. I mean, she can barely, she's 8, and I got I think it's a 12-pound maul. She can barely, she lifts it up. She and more drops on the log, but just getting them out there. And all I want them to do is stack the wood for me. I'll split it, and you just be out there and stack it, type of thing. And the other thing, you don't see kids. My wife and I were like, go outside. We'll call you in when you got to eat lunch or you got to reapply sunscreen. That's about all we care about. But like growing up, I'm a little older than you guys, but I'm sure it was the same with you. But kids were outside playing on their bikes. Whatever, unorganized sports. I grew up, we had the park where now Walmart's there, but that was my childhood. I think I spent more time in the park than I did in my house.
For
playing
sure. We would be over
football.
Neighbors' houses doing it. Kick the can. That's what our sport was as a kid, was run until you kick the stupid can, get punched in the face on the way. Like,
I mean, we would play shoot 'em up, bust 'em up, or whatever. Tackle the man with the ball.
Right.
Just
we
insane.
always joke and say America went wrong when they took dodgeball out of school for kids or whatever. And it's funny because we tell that story about the dodgeball and kids being soft because of it. Elementary school, my gym teacher happens to be my now wife's dad. And when we were in elementary school, he used to do this thing where it wasn't dodgeball. He would line up like the old gym mats, probably 8 feet wide accordion. He would put them up in the corners only. So, the corners have little protection, and between each one, you got to run. And this dude stood in the middle of the gym with as many dodgeball bags as he had. And the gym session was, you start behind one pad and you run to the next, and he pelts you.
Oh my God. You could not do that today.
It's funny
Right.
when my second stint in college, when I left, so I went to Geneseo and I thought I wanted to be a teacher until I studied other things in Geneseo. But when I went back to MCC, I had to do it. I had to take an English course, and then one of the papers that I had to write, it was an argument paper, and I actually wrote a paper on why dodgeball should still be in schools. And I found articles online about it. It was like a legit. I wish I still had it was on one of those old big tower computers that you had back then. I don't know what the hell happened to that, but I wish I still had that paper.
Every now and again, the dodgeballs would be down to too many. They'd throw the volleyballs in there. Oh, well, man.
Which I love it. So my son does wrestling, and the Churchville does a camp, and the last day of the camp, it's just games, and one of the game they do dodgeball. And one of the last games they play is the parents versus the kids. Oh. And I get I get out there and I freaking wing the balls. Go for blood.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. Back to the fire service.
This is the fun shit.
Yeah. As an instructor, we kind of touched on it with the pass-fail stuff with the TOEIC, trying to be diplomatic about this and skirt around the issue, because I think you know how I feel. How do you get away with, or how do you get around with getting people to pass when they shouldn't pass? Like, how do you help them? You know this person shouldn't be a firefighter. You know they could get hurt if they continue on. As an instructor, what do you tell them, or what do you tell their chief? Are you ever in that position to do that?
A couple times already this year. And when it's, so like for my department, I'll say it outright because I'm working with you. At the county thing, it was my first time, not my place to say anything, not my academy. But I also feel a little bit more inclined to say something at the county academy because you guys are coming for my son. You guys are coming for my wife, my brother, uncle, whoever, friends, fellow friends that are coworkers. And I know you can't do it. I told our academy when I went out this year for the first time, you don't have to be the best, but you've got to be able to toe the line. And if I don't see you putting an effort to do that and make sure you can do the job well, that's a slap in the fucking face, because I'm working hard to do it, to make sure you can, that I can, and then I teach you to do it the right way. And I honestly think the only way now, with the legality of New York State, OFPC, whatever, civil service, is you've got to hope that person has the Irish Catholic guilt and some self-awareness, that you sit them down and you say, you are not meant for this. If you don't get hurt, you are going to get somebody else hurt. Can you look me in the eye and live with that? And I actually said that a few times at our academy. And I hate to see people leave. I really do. I don't want to see anybody quit the fire academy. I want to see everybody pass. But you got to meet the standard. And and not the BS standard, the real standard. You got to be able to do the job. We're not looking for the pros right away. But you got to be able to, throw ladders, stretch hose, with hiccups, but be able to do it. And if you can't, and you aren't bowing out, you have to have that sit down with somebody and say, look, as a human being, can you look me in the eye and say, I am going to save you, or I am not going to be the reason you die? I'm telling you right now, from what I've seen out of you and what I know about the fire service, you can't. So you go home and you look deep into your soul in that mirror, and you have a long talk tonight, and we'll talk again tomorrow. And we might get in trouble for that. I might get in trouble for that. But you know what? My job as an instructor is to make the fire service tomorrow better. And if that means keeping somebody out of it that doesn't belong, I'll lose my instructing job over that. And I'll lose my fire job over that. But if I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. Just letting somebody sneak by so I don't get fired from the fire bureau. No, that's not it for me.
it's kind of tough because being an instructor, yeah, you're following a curriculum. We all got to follow the same curriculum, no matter what department or county agency, whatever it is that we're representing in the moment. We all got to follow that same, you said, BS standard, right?
Sometimes.
But if we're out there teaching it or teaching in a full week, so let's say, just engine week through and through, you're not just an adjunct, you're in charge of that engine week, or maybe you're there majority of the time all the way through the academy, you're kind of stamping a little bit of your brand on that thing. All right. It's not, I'm not saying it's it's the Mike May Fire Service that you're branding this thing as, and it's very different from the rest of the state or anything like that. It's just that you're trying to produce the best that you possibly can. And then these people are going to go out there, and even though they're kind of starting their own brand, they got your brand attached to them. So when they go out there and they mess up or they consistently fail without showing improvement, we'll put it that way. I think that's fair enough. Yeah. That's got your name on it. Exactly. It's like the biggest thing in the fire service is our reputation. That's our currency. It's not money, right? You throw $5 on the table and then you walk away, you go home and forget to pick up that $5. When you come back, there's 20 on that table because guys aren't sure what they're throwing money in for, right? You throw your phone charger on there, that gets stolen, right? But your reputation is something that you never get back.
Yeah.
Once it dwindles down, you kind of build that up, but you can't, once it's out there and it gets ruined, it's hard to really, all right, maybe I misspoke. It's not that you can't get it back. It's just really, really, really hard to recover from.
Yeah, that's the one question you always ask when somebody messes something up. Who taught you that? Where did you learn that?
Who taught you that?
And then the name comes out. Do you want your name on that?
Well, sometimes that works the other way where, if somebody is messing up without improvement, right? And they say, who taught you that? And they go, oh, well, it was Matt Humnicke. That, or let's say it's Luke, a good one's Luke. Well, Lou Cominelli showed me that. And I know the hell he didn't because he wouldn't have that.
Exactly.
I mean, how many times we've said that about, your uncle? You're like, no, he did not. I know he does not teach that, or he wouldn't approve of that. You weren't paying attention.
Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. It could work the other way.
You guys hit the nail on the head with the reputation of your academy students that you've sent out into the world. I look back at the guys that we put through that COVID academy in 2020, and it's like when I hear good things about them, it's like, man, I did something right. Or I hear they did a good fire. It's like I almost feel like I know I wasn't at the fire, but like when their department
hits a fire,
something
you taught them got used.
Yeah,
I mean that's the biggest compliment you can ever get as an instructor. Like when somebody comes back to me and they're like, "Hey, remember that thing we talked about? I used it at a fire the other day, and blah blah blah." I was like, "Wow." Turn around. Like I looked at my wife one time. I was like, I can't believe he just said that. Like, that makes me feel really good. She's like, whatever, it's cheesy. I was like, shut up, you don't get it.
It's just as a good feeling. I was going in your own fire and getting a good stop when you hear one of your students perform the way you taught them to perform and, did everything right the way they should do. Right. It's such a good feeling.
Yeah.
But that's part of and maybe brand wasn't the correct word to use, but I like it because it's, a brand. I'm thinking when I say brand, I don't mean like how influencers, it's my brand. No, I mean like hot cattle brand and the ass type of thing. Okay, that's my cattle. But it's not just, hey, that's mine, I'm selling it, everybody's got to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
The more your reputation, how you build up your reputation is you're also getting, you're reinvesting yourself. So it's not that I'm just dishing out what New York State says or what IFSTA says or what NFPA says. I'm okay, I see something where we need to progress. I got to retell or restructure how I'm teaching, not necessarily just what I'm teaching, but it works both ways. You're not just dishing something out there and going, oh, but too bad, that's mine, or tough shit. Deal with it. It's coming back to you too. So if your brand is out there, people are going to be like, oh man, I'm going to use his name on it. He's a shit stain. I don't like what he's teaching, so I'm going to stop sending my people there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough line sometimes.
So you looking to promote at any time, or are you just happy being a black hat fireman sitting in the back? I
am very happy being a fireman. I like being able to rotate the positions. I don't know if promotion's ever on the horizon, but if it is, just for the family, probably won't be until after the kids in school. I could be completely wrong. The timing might line up right. but there's a possibility that just a change in groups could mess up, childcare and whatnot. But even more so, just with our backgrounds of training, usually training people go to staff, and that would be tough on the wife to do everything, all the time and work her job if I got sent to staff, 4 to 5 days a week while the kid's still, not in school yet. So if I ever do, it won't be until then. But the biggest thing for me outside of enjoying it is I just started doing this fire instructor thing. I don't agree with somebody being a fire instructor that hasn't been a fireman for years, right? If you've been a fireman for years or an officer for years, doesn't matter. But don't be a firefighter instructor and then go take a test and be a lieutenant. Now you got to worry about being a lieutenant, company officer, whatever it may be. It's a different job. If I want to breach that gap, maybe I'll start doing officer stuff then and still teach some basic fireman stuff. But, like you guys, and especially you, Lou, I like doing the non-curriculum stuff of this is what's going to help make you better. And I think it's harder to teach firemen stuff if you're not a fireman.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I got to ask this question. I was talking to someone that works on another truck company in your department, and this is when we were kind of setting our SOGs and SOPs here and how we operate in our department. And I asked the question because our area runs Quince. It is what it is. But is there ever a time that is the truck company going to pull a line?
It's got to be bad. I mean, I'm talking like babies throwing mom out the window and the engine siren can't be heard type thing. It's got to be bad. My last boss, same thing. He comes from the county volunteer world. He grew up in the Quint Midi days. He talked about it, and he again said it's got to be bad. We got to pull up, get out, and listen, and not hear anything for a long ways. And he goes, even if we do that, we're going to spray water. We're going to disconnect the line, and we're going to hide it. Because if somebody sees a line coming off that Quint, he goes, forget the whole mentality of getting harassed. He goes, it's going to screw everything up because it's not the way we work. It's not the way we work.
So, what about some of the single truck companies that, there's two off the top of my head that are, single truck companies, one's on the east side, one's on the west side.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a potential for them to John Wayne it.
Yeah. So, truck 5, truck 4, there's something right around the corner behind them. It's possible. But again, going back to and it's not possible. Sometimes you can't. If you can get in, and it all depends on the fire. If you can get in and get a primary, and to me, and maybe, this is a topic for another day, the primary is up to what's on fire. If something's on fire, that primary's done. The fire's there, there's a victim, they're gone. If it's fully involved, right? And if it's not, we can get inside that room. We're searching into the fire room. If you can search from there back and then get out, I don't want the house to burn, but that's your job as the truck companies to perform the primary and look for victims. Go do that, and by the time you finish that, the engine's going to be pulled. It actually recently happened northeast side not too long ago. I was floating over another company, and the first company on scene was a truck, and they were there for a little bit, and they made sure it was a vacant, but they cleared everything and said, we're all good. Within reason. They're not going to, throw themselves above the fire into an attic without an engine on scene. But they cleared everything and said, nope, primary's good before the engine pulled up. But I think that comes down to a boss or, a BC's on scene. I don't see it happening. But maybe, you never know. Who knows?
And Matt, I think you would agree with me that mentality is slowly trickling into our department and the rest of the county departments. There's guys still ask me, we talked about a couple jobs that your group had, a couple garage fires, and it's like the engine was 30 seconds away. Did you, really need to pull a line? And we talked about another job, Mike, and I was like, and we're talking about pulling lines off the truck, and someone asked me if you were on, because we're on the day we were on an engine, so we acted as the first due engine. And the question was, the fire that you took pictures of, like if you were on your truck company, would you have pulled a line? I said no. First of all, the engine would have been there a lot quicker because our truck doesn't move as fast. Yeah. Second of all, the amount of fire we had, we needed an engine being the primary unit pumping water.
Right.
One, because that's what it's meant to do. It does it better than the Quinn. And two, you just have way more options for hand lines coming off that rig. The Quinn concept works. It's like almost like a little kid's rubby that they sleep with at night. It's like their comfort blanket that you have it when you need it. But
yeah, like we said, it's got to be bad for that to happen. And to your point, like even when it just comes down to like the discipline and catching the fires, knowing what's going on. If you pull up and you just hear a siren, guys are coming quick. Guys are coming quick when something's on fire, especially once you confirm it, call it a working fire. Just you getting off and throwing a ladder, getting up to the door to start forced entry, the engine's already pulling up. The line's already getting stretched. And to the point of, oh, well, how are you going to start your search? Depending on where the fire is, if the fire's on the second floor, you can at least get the, first floor done. And if it is on the second floor, especially, in the county, more compartmentalized, modern construction platform builds, it's sometimes shied away from, but it's getting more prominent, and I think it should. Start VES. You don't need a hose line there, and sometimes you almost don't want the hose line in operation to start VES. And the whole pushing fire and high pressure, low pressure things is another, again, topic for a different day, but you can get all that stuff started and completed real quick without an engine there. The only time you don't want to do that is when there's heavy fire on the first floor starting to break out of the window right below where you got to go. That might not go so hot, but outside of that,
it will go hot.
You can do your job. Valid point, man. Yeah, sorry, words have meaning. You're right.
We're getting there out in the county. We're getting better at, as Lou was just explaining, having that truck and that dedicated as a truck company. It's more the apprehension that still exists is kind of from our veteran forces or veteran guys that they were there a long time ago when it was just two men on an engine.
Yeah,
maybe there was a pickup truck or it was four in an engine. Truck company, eventually for us, it was engine, and then there was a truck company that was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. With a couple guys. It didn't always exist. So there's some old habits we're still breaking out of, and that comes to play when they see flame. But overall, I think we're progressing, especially since we're getting the more appropriate numbers for a fire.
Right. Yeah, now it's getting easier for you guys to do that.
It is.
And I had somebody, a chief in our department, phrase it this way one time because he came from the equipment days. He says sometimes more people on less apparatus is way more efficient than the same amount of people showing up on 3, 4 more rigs because of the headache it causes of people trying to do their individual tasks in small sizes. So when you get to that right staffing sweet spot of 3, 4, 5, depending on your district, that's when things can move a lot better. And you can start to operate the way things, were intended to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes I think the jobs went a little bit smoother when we had a couple less guys on there. But when we had less guys, we had a lot. It was the experience gap. We had senior men. Now they're all gone, so now we have a ton of June, 1, 2, 3 year guys. And, and you got to rely on the officers to point the kids in the right direction.
Right.
And some of them only have a year or two ahead of them,
Exactly.
Not all of them. That's not all of them, but they didn't get the opportunity to really solidify their black hat before they could, move up to a different color.
There's some
it's not their fault. Someone called, they answered,
Right. Yeah, there's some great officers that have little time on the job. But when it comes to experience, I'm of the opinion we should be pushing it out to 5 years to take the test. It's getting, like you said, somebody with 3 years hits it because they're smart, but they didn't catch, it could be like me, love the fire service, want to do the job nonstop. You're just a wet blanket. You don't catch shit for the longest time, Your intentions are there, but the experience sure does make up for a hell of a lot of that.
Yep, I agree with that. So you got any going on about, where are we at? Hour and 40-something minutes. Any final thoughts?
Oh man, asking a May for final thoughts that's a horrible. That's a horrible idea.
That's why I gave you 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What do you want? What do you want to talk about? What do you got?
What do you got for somebody that wants to come on the job? All right, to prepare for the academy, prepare for the exam. What can they expect? What should they be improving in their regular lives while they're at their MIC job or their office job?
Academically, I guess, read anything. It doesn't have to be fire service related because the civil service test obviously doesn't correlate to that. If you've been out of school for a while, get back into just, what was the game we played as kids? The cards, multiplication, 24 or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Challenge 24.
Yeah, download that on your phone or get the game itself. Do something that gets you doing basic math, some fractions, this gear turns this way, turns that way. To our point earlier, take tests everywhere. Even if you don't want to go be a clerk, go take the clerk test because it gets you involved in how the process works. You know what to expect, and it gets your brain back in that test-taking mode. Physically, I would say if you don't know, and even if you think you know, find somebody in the fire service that cares about fitness, get their advice. If you don't do that or don't know how to do that, just go on the internet and look it up, fire fitness instructor, something like that, and just do what they do. Got to be doing at least 20, 30 minutes of hard cardio. I would say at least 3 to 4 times a week, and you got to pick up heavy stuff. Do it healthily. Don't go get yourself hurt with ego lifting, but you've got to start working your body up to picking up heavy things. Think about how heavy, you read about some of our equipment being, and now just look around next time you're at a restaurant or you're out driving around. Look at how heavy some of these people are walking around. You got to move that. You got to get your body ready now. Start now. And you still got to keep building your strength as soon as you get on the job. But bigger than that, get your diet right. Drink water. Maybe one less beer. Drink more water. And the prehab and rehab thing. Stretch. If you got to go get massages because you're prone to, knots and shit like that, take care of your body now. Because if you don't, and you start in the fire service going the same way like I did, oof, you're going to be hurting. You're going to be hurting.
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Fast forward to 3 to, let's say, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
When should somebody recognize, or what should they recognize when they should start kind of taking over as the next wave of senior man?
Oh, I thought you were going to go for a different question. All right.
Well, you could make up your own question if you'd like instead. Never mind.
I thought you were going to say talking about physical fitness. I was like, it's when you got to start sucking in a little bit harder to button the pants every morning for work. And then, you've gone too far. That firehouse food's good, but you got to realize you got to push away.
Now, what should people be looking out for? What should they be recognizing, and how can they kind of take that lead?
To lose point, the more you teach, the more it forces you to be better at this job. But you got to make sure you're teaching the right stuff. So pay attention to when you think your senior person's going to be leaving. They go somewhere else, they get promoted, retire, whatever it may be. When you know that's coming a year or so out or more, start asking for their advice on how to start taking over. Ask to lead training. Ask questions nonstop. Not dumb questions. Don't ask questions you know the answer to or things that you think are just making you look smart. Ask real, thoughtful questions that are going to make you better at the job. Because nothing pisses guys off more than you asking a question that they know the answer to. Or I phrased that improperly. The guy you're asking knows you know the answer. Don't ask questions like that. But start getting yourself groomed by asking to take over the things that guy did early, so they're there with you under their wing to say, nope, well, good. You got to fly at some point. Don't wait until they kick you out of the nest. Let them tie a string to you.
It's another good one. I should have wrote some of these down. Oh man, good stuff tonight. Good stuff, man.
One of my favorite quotes is from my last senior man. Shit's different when it's on fire. You can think you're as prepared as you want. If something catches on fire, you can't do the thing you did 20 times an hour before that.
Yep, that is also true. Matt, you got anything else?
No, I think that just about wraps it up for me.
Well, I know for a fact we didn't get into a lot of stuff that we probably wanted to talk about. I could tell Mike wanted to talk about some other stuff. So probably had to have him back on again. I mean, this was good, but try to keep it It was funny. My wife just found out we have this podcast. We were sitting because I was like, oh, Matt and I are gonna do a podcast, and she goes, oh, okay. And she goes, when did you start that? I was like, well, we've done a couple. So I sent her the link to it. She goes, you've done 5 already? And she looked at the first. She looked at the first one she did. She goes, what was it, like over 3 hours? So we
I can't remember.
You know,
One of them was a little long, and that was the first thing. Too long. Keep listening.
She's like, who the hell's going to listen to you for 3 hours? I was like, whatever. Shut up. You're not listening anyways.
I didn't ask for your opinion. I told you I was doing a podcast.
Yeah. So a voice from a non-firefighter who had, I don't know, she might have more of a attention span than we do, is shorten them up a little bit. So,
oh, I can believe it. Squirrel. I'm surprised I was focused this whole time. I'm proud of myself.
I'll just speed it up at the end, and we'll cut it down. It'll sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Well, yeah, I should have told her we'll listen to it at like 1.5 speed or twice the speed.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back on and talk about some of the other stuff that we didn't hit on tonight, because I know there's, and I'll probably take some notes because there's a lot of stuff that we kind of touched on, but we didn't really get into the weeds about it, which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but we'll save that for another night.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I was humbled and honored you guys even thought to bring me on and talk about stuff. So I appreciate it. If you do it again, I'd look forward to it.
So before we part, you got kind of a Instructor Instagram page.
Oh God, yeah, here we go.
You got to get it out there. There.
Yeah, it started with what I put on there for. I find more good videos of fireground shit on Instagram because everybody just wants their, they want the recognition or to say they did this and that. There's some good companies that are just like, hey, we go to fires, check it out. This is what you can learn from. But I went on there to find good fires because after a while, you can only be a loser and search through YouTube so much before you go, I've seen this video. I know what's going to happen at this point in this video.
Yeah.
So I went to Instagram. My coworker goes, you made an Instagram page just to watch videos? And you're calling yourself an instructor? He's like, you got to tell us something. It's like, all right. So I guess I kind of started it. And it, like you said, people started liking it. And it depends on the post I put out. And some people really like it. And other people, are starting, I'm starting to get random people follow me from across the country, which is kind of cool. Some bigger training companies that have, thousands of people looking at their stuff. So I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. I better not fuck this up. It's pretty big.
All right, so
big. What is ruin some people here?
So what is it? You can't. Got to give us the name.
It's literally just instructor.mike.may.
Oh, there you go. Nice and simple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The whole reason when I started posting too was not for guys like us. People like us are always going to read something, whether or not we learn from it or not. We're curious. We want to learn. But it was for the younger generation of guys that are too afraid to go out and ask. Maybe the senior guy doesn't care to train, the boss doesn't care to train, and they're eager, or they just don't know any better, but they're always in their phones. All new people are on their phones nonstop. Even I'm guilty of it at times. So I said, you know what? If somebody doesn't want to come out and take the class I post, if I can at least put something out there that they see, I don't even care. I care if somebody says what I'm saying is wrong or stupid. But if that new person brings it up at the kitchen table and it prompts a conversation to hopefully reaffirm what I'm saying, or even if the senior guy slams it and they talk about how it should be done, they're talking about it. And that's all I can ask for.
That's a good point.
If I can be the catalyst for training conversation or training, I'm doing my job. Now, I hope what I'm saying is right and you're using it. But even if it's not, one, let me know. And then two, it's at least sparking that conversation, which some people, that's all they need. They want to train. They know what to train on. They just need that push. I'm okay being a catalyst. I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but I'd like to think I'm pretty good at being a catalyst when it comes to finding the right stuff.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good point. Good stuff. That's all you can ask for is just starting the conversation at the table, and that's usually where the good drills start.
Exactly.
Question at the table leads into a discussion. Then it's like, what? Let's go out in the truck bay, and then one question turns into it.
The Marine Corps training is a challenge. Challenge somebody. I bet you can't, blah, blah, blah. Oh, really, motherfucker? Okay. Next thing you know, there you are doing it. I showed you I could. I knew you could. I just wanted to see you do it. That's all.
That's awesome. Man, I like that. Being a catalyst. That's kind of what we strive to do on this podcast. With that, we've actually been encouraging people to either reach out to us on our Instagram page at firefrom2windows, or our email address, which is firefrom2windows@gmail.com. I know it's free, but that's what we got working right now. Eventually, hopefully we can get a nice Q&A session based off of the responses that we've gotten, and we can answer those. Mike, we might even have you back on some of these questions people have been sending in. I'm pretty sure that half of them are from your uncle, just with disguised names.
It can't be. He can't figure out technology. It's got to be somebody doing it for him.
I don't know. He's got an iPhone now, so he's up and at it, because he texts me every once in a while. Hey, what are you doing? And then he'll respond to himself too. Hey, what are you doing? No, I'm at lunch. Hey, come let me in. I haven't said anything. He's in my front lawn. So, well, we appreciate you coming out and spending your time with us. Hopefully we can have you on again. Anything else you want to add?
That'd be great. Just stay safe and keep training. Keep training. Always be a student of the fire service. Have fun with it.
All right, Mike. Thank you very much for everything that your commitment to the fire service, your dedication to your department, and sharing that experience out in the county with us all, being a catalyst out there in the world. And most importantly, thank you for your service with the Marines. We really appreciate it. And to everybody else out there that's listening, please be safe. We'll see you.